First, I'd like to thank the University of Minnesota for welcoming us. Dr. Bob Morrison, Dr. Monsi, and Dr. Han-Soo Ju, which he had a very close family relationship with. Anytime I get the honor of speaking, I would like to honor my mother, Loretta Leman, for we all know that behind a good man is a great woman. Thank you. Who here knew Al Leman personally? Let me see a show of hands. All right, there's a good many of you. That means many of you did not also. And today I'm here just to bring Al to life a little bit. He was born in 1944 on a small farm in Eureka, Illinois. He was the second of 4 boys. He always claimed his earliest memory was 2 years old when his older brother, climbed up in his crib and biffed him in the nose. He was very active in 4-H, primarily showing sheep all throughout elementary school, middle school, and high school. He eventually rose to the national rank of national president of the 4-H Foundation. Al was long considered the family favorite by all 4 brothers. They all cried and howled because he got special treatment. In fact, he notoriously got out of washing the dishes because it made his feet itch. Al was raised by a man, my grandfather, of such patience that all 4 boys, even to this day, say they have never seen him mad. Now, if any of you have children, as I do, and boys in particular, that is an amazing feat. But he cornered Al one day and confronted him about his prolonged dating relationship with Loretta. He said, "Either make that woman your wife or let her go. You're wasting her time." That was quite possibly the best decision he has ever made in his life. Al was a homecoming king and a standout athlete in basketball and football, but only played those sports the last 2 years in high school because of his farming duties. He followed his older brother, Gene Leman, to the University of Illinois, and he followed his passion for animal health to achieve several master's degrees, several PhDs, and his doctor of veterinary medicine and swine health. He came to the University of Minnesota in 1975 as a swine extension vet and immediately began ruffling feathers. He circumnavigated the typical university fundraising channel and started directly lobbying the state legislature for funds to establish a university research facility. He got his hand slapped, but he succeeded. And what you see, he planted the seed of what you see today, science-driven solutions. Now, I have endless stories about my father. He was a renowned vet, yes, but he was a world-famous sleeper. In fact, he napped so much you never really knew when he was asleep. On a Sunday afternoon, he was a long-suffering Cubs fan, being a boy from Illinois, so on a Sunday afternoon, he'd put a pillow under his head on the couch, and he'd fall asleep. He'd take a nap with the Cubs game on TV. And we'd wait a good 35, 40 minutes until totally motionless. We'd sneak over, and we'd grab the remote and change the channel. And without even opening his eyes, he'd take the pillow and hit us, put it back under his base, and turn it back to the Cubs game. I'm watching it. He had the most unusual eating habits. He was eating rolled oats long before they were considered healthy. And he delighted his 3 children with putting peas, corn, and lima beans in their pancakes, and then topping it off with raw, unfiltered molasses. Yet, sometimes you'd see him sit down and eat a pound of candy at a family get-together. We all have our weak spots, don't we? Once, famously, he ate a can of dog food that was unlabeled and open in the fridge. And when confronted with the fact, he shrugged his shoulders and said, "Animals in this country eat better than people in most of the rest of the world." Al was the consummate devil's advocate. He was constantly taking the other side of the issue. Sometimes to spite you, sometimes to ruffle your feathers. He did it to challenge your ideas and to test your resolve. He did this so much he never really knew which side of the issue he came down on personally. I always tell my wife, he would have been in cahoots with my wife. Oh, he would have loved her. And I often think of that and miss him dearly because of that. He was constantly speaking. He was always speaking to some group. I grew up in the backseat of a single-engine airplane, flying around the Midwest, visiting farms, talking to producers, or listening to my father talk to producers. Another napping story. While we were flying, I would be in the co-pilot seat, and he would be up flying away, and he would give me a compass reading and an altitude reading, and he'd take a 10-minute nap. I hope no one from the FFA is in here. He had a 5-gallon bucket of slides and a couple empty trays. And about 20 minutes before he was supposed to speak, he'd find a little hallway and he'd sit down in that bucket and he'd rummage through his bucket of slides. And he'd be holding slides up, trying to put the presentation together that he thought would be the most beneficial. He always said you can tell the quality of an audience by the number of seed corn hats. He just loved talking to the common man and the producer. Now, I was at a conference one time where someone raised their hand and said, Al, you told us the exact opposite thing last year. You have totally contradicted yourself. And he just smiled and said, well, I know more this year. I dare say over his lifetime, he was on 1,000 hog farms. But these visits that I did with him are some of my most cherished memories. Really, it was like watching an artist at work. He always had a slightly inappropriate joke ready for the farm hands. And then he'd walk around with everyone in tow and help the farmers in any way that he could. He just loved helping producers. Now, he passed away in August of 1992, a little over 22 years ago. I was 15 years old. We were running together, and he died suddenly of a heart attack. At the time, he was 48. I did not know my father as a businessman, a mentor, a professional, a vet. I knew him only as Dad. And I'm still learning about my father continuously. I was told just last year a story of a vet in Canada that has a picture of my dad up in his office. And when asked why, he told the story about when he was an undergrad at University of Minnesota. He was very discouraged with the pre-vet program and told Al, I just don't see a future in it. Well, apparently, a good way to fire up Al Leman was to tell her that there's no future in animal health. 3 hours later, the young man emerged from Al's office after a good talking to, I suppose, and chose to continue on the vet practice. Said it's one of the most meaningful decisions he's ever made in his life. Al taught me many things. He taught me to invite the world into your home. At our time here in Minnesota, I would say hundreds and hundreds of foreign scientists, dignitaries, vet students, grad students came to our house. He also taught me life is fragile. You can go for a run and never come home. And because of that, you would best be doing something meaningful with your life. He was always talking about going big and shooting the moon and letting it all hang out. Go for the gusto. He taught me to pursue my passion. In the aftermath of my father's death, I saw the financial heartache and headache that follows. And only after many years did I learn that Al had taken the time and expense to plan for the unexpected. Thank you, Dad. I saw my mother establish a relationship with a financial professional for help and guidance, and I saw that relationship bless my mother again and again over the years. In his life and his death, he has inspired me to follow my heart into the noble field of financial planning. After that experience, how could I not? But I can only speak to what he taught and how he inspires me. If he taught you something, pass it on. That was his legacy. and now it can be yours. I have one more story for you. When he was a senior in high school, there was a big game and he was starting at middle linebacker in football. And someone stepped on his foot early in the game, and he limped it off, and he played through the pain, and at halftime, he took a shoe off to see what the damage was. He quickly realized that his big toenail had been ripped off, and his sock was soaked in blood all the way up to the top of the shoe. And so he stuffed his shoe back on and tied it quick so the coach wouldn't see it, because he knew if he saw it, he wouldn't be able to play the second half. Now, he told us this story only once, but it immediately became legend. And then soon, it became a Leman family rule. If the blood isn't over the top of your shoe, you keep playing. Now, if you would grant me the honor of stepping into Al's shoes for a moment, here's what I think he would say to you today. The industry has been dealt a blow. We're down right now. It's halftime, and our foot is bloody. But look up. Do not be discouraged. We need the collective passion in this room to put the shoe on and serve the producers only the way we can. Care deeply and passionately about our animals and invest heavily in the folks that care for them every day. This will not be our last challenge. We have to get better. We have to know more tomorrow than we do today. If we are not tackling the unsolvable problems or asking the unanswerable questions, we are not living up to our potential. Be bold. Step out. Take a chance. Fail dramatically. The future of animal health is bright. Even brighter today than it was 40 years ago. But remember what will carry on your legacy. Pigs will not. People will. Your students, your teachers, your professors, your colleagues, your family, your sons and daughters, your grandchildren, they will tell your stories for generations to come. And I will end with one of my favorite quotes. When you cast your stone into the pond of life, you have no idea whose boat it will rock or upon what distant shores those ripples will land. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you very much, Guy.